Well, chapter 7, this is the ninth week, and I hope you had a good spring break. So we're going to tackle middle childhood. You know, middle childhood. This is when the girls get tall and the boys stay short. So the all of a sudden the girls are taller than the boys, and that's the chapter we're talking about. Height and weight, growth in height and weight during middle childhood slows considerably. African American boys and girls tend to grow faster than white children do. The body's failure to produce enough growth hormone leads to growth deficiency. This is very rare. Growth deficiency in this case is a stature below 5 feet tall. There are people that are shorter than 5 feet tall. My mother was only 4'8", and she lived on a farm during the Depression, which she was eating okay. She was just not a very tall person. Her whole family was relatively short. So my daughter's only 4'11". I can assure you I fed her as well as I possibly could. Girls and boys remain the same size for most of middle childhood, but girls will begin their prepubertal growth spurt 2 years before boys about age 9. It will take boys until their adolescence to catch up with the girls of the same age. It makes for some strange dancing at preteen dances, of course, just like what we see here. Tall girl and a short boy, who probably were about the same size. She just had a growth spurt before he did. Acceptance by peers at this age is often predicated on external appearance and physical competence. Both boys and girls often use advanced maturity as a criteria for selecting friends and leaders. And there you go. What you need is a hat like that in order to be so cool. Much more cool than all the other people in your group. Wait a minute, these two are twins, aren't they? Yeah, they look like identical twins. I never noticed that before. Greater muscle development as a child ages leads to more and more physical activity. Children will develop bilateral coordination, strength, flexibility, impulsion, speed, precision, balance, and rhythm. Most children at this age try different sports. Most sports give the child an opportunity to develop specific sports skills and life skills that can be applied to everyday life. Sports helps the child develop competence, character, connection, and caring. Children need an average of 2,400 calories per day. Breakfast should supply about 25% of the child's total daily calories. Nutritionists recommend plenty of grains, fruits, and vegetables, which are high in natural nutrients. U.S. children tend to eat too much fat, sugar, and low nutrient foods. 17% of school-age children are considered obese. Something to think about. Results in research studies have shown that better nourished children are more energetic, less anxious, show more positive emotion, score higher than malnourished children score on a wide range of cognitive measures in middle childhood. Rates of asthma, a chronic illness of the lungs characterized by wheezing, coughing, and shortness of breath, are highest in middle childhood. Children who are at the highest risk of developing asthma are boys. If they were, especially if they were low birth weight, if their parents smoke, if they are poor, and if they are obese. Part of that has to do with malnutrition and not getting adequate nutrition. Asthma may be higher in developed countries because of high interiors and extreme cleanliness. However, in developing countries, air pollution may be the biggest contributor. So it really all depends on where you are. The more time you spend indoors, the more likely you are to have asthma. The extreme cleanliness does not allow your immune system to develop as completely as it would if you were around bacteria and common bacteria and common viruses. So being extremely clean is not always a positive thing. African American children are at greater risk than other children in the United States for developing asthma, but their parents seem to be the most responsive in creating an environment that avoids asthma triggers. Maintaining health and fitness. Exercise promotes health and fitness. Participation in a variety of competitive and recreational sports, such as tennis, bowling, lead to lifetime fitness regimen. 15% of boys and 26% of girls do not exercise 3 times a week where they breathe hard or sweat. Vision and hearing problems. Most children in middle school childhood have keener vision than when they were younger. Almost 13% of children under 18 can't see at all or have impaired vision. About 15% of 6 to 19-year-olds, mostly boys, have some hearing loss. There is a sharp increase in the incidence of myopia in middle childhood. Myopia is a form of nearsightedness. Children, especially in developing countries, tend to have increasing eyesight problems due to poor lighting and an increase in the need to read and write. 2 factors leading to poor eyesight in today's culture: genetic predisposition for eyesight problems and increased use of phones and computers. 25% of children need glasses. And here are 2 twins that both of them have glasses. And they wear the same shirts and same shoes. Accidental injuries. Injuries increase between ages 5 to 14. As in early childhood, accidental injuries are the leading cause of death. Parents and children themselves tend to overestimate their safety skills. Protective headgear lowers injuries in activities such as football, roller skating, and the like. Boys have far more accidents than girls do because they tend to be more active. Uh, I took my grandson to soccer practice last night. He came in. He had a black eye, and I asked him what happened. He said, "Well, I was playing basketball. I got hit in the eye." He said, "Earlier today, I got hit in the nose, and my nose was bleeding, and then I got hit in the lip, and my lip was bleeding, and all of that was from playing basketball and not quite catching the ball when it got close to his face, I guess." 1 in 10 children at this age range suffers from serious emotional disturbances. 13% suffer from anxiety disorders, 2% suffer from severe depression, 5% suffer ADHD, 1 to 4% suffer from conduct disorder, and 0 to 5% suffer from schizophrenia. Oppositional defiant disorder, or ODD, is a pattern of behavior where a child is uncooperative and hostile toward authority figures. For ODD to be diagnosed, the behavior must interfere with the child's daily life. 15% of school-aged children struggle with ODD, but most grow out of it before they are diagnosed with the more severe conduct disorder. ODD is often comorbid with ADHD, learning disabilities, anxiety disorders, or mood disorders. And this is one of the reasons why we had this slide before we had this slide, so that you can see just how many individuals suffer from these problems. The concrete operational stage runs from ages 7 to 11 and usually introduces the child to more complex mental operations that will initiate the child into the world of academia. Cognitive advances, understanding of spatial relationships better. They understand seriation, which means a child can arrange objects in a series based on 1 or more dimensions, such as weight, lightest to heaviest, or changes in color. They understand the principle of identity, which is part of conservation. Reversibility, classification understanding. To reverse classifications, subtraction becomes possible at this stage. Horizontal décalage, they master ideas of conservation of different items at different ages. Volumes of liquids, solid measures, and numbers. How things change. Children in middle childhood become better at dealing with organization. They understand that there is a difference between a whole and the sum of its parts. This is known as class inclusion. The individual also understands seriation, or the ability to scale objects according to a dimension. Efficiency of mental operations is based on an individual's ability to encode, store, and retrieve information. One question is how much information children can handle at a given time. How quickly and accurately can they process the information? Metamemory is understanding the process of their own memory. Information is gathered from our senses in our sensory register and filtered to determine which information the individual is going to allow into their thought processes. Most of their thought takes place in our working memory. The working memory can only hold a limited number of items for a limited period of time. Learning information must take place in a form of permanent storage, the long-term memory. When children first start school, they have to develop the ability to tune out distracting stimulation and focus on a particular task. This is known as selective attention. A second grader may have trouble concentrating on a task if there is music playing, but by the sixth grade, the child won't be bothered by the music. When a child starts school, they begin organizing their recurring processes in their memories as scripts that they can repeat when needed. Toothbrushing script, the buttoning clothes script, the zipping up clothes script, tying your shoes script, and that's what's going on in the picture. Sitting quietly and when at school script, doing math at math time script. Most people think that they live in Lake Wobegon, where all the women are strong, all the men are good looking, and the children are all above average. At least that is how parents think of their children. That is why intelligence tests are tolerated in the United States. The significant rise in IQ tests scores during the 20th century is known as the Flynn effect. In 1999, James Flynn recognized that the median IQ score had increased from 1932 till 1997 by as much as 20 points. The rise is thought to be from environmental causes such as better prenatal care, smaller families with fewer children, competing for resources, attending preschool, and even watching educational children's programming. But the most likely influential reason for the rise in IQ scores is the decline of infectious diseases, which drains the body of energy that is needed for physical and cognitive growth. Lots of different reasons that we can see for IQ tests or IQ scores rising so readily over the last, what was that, 65 years? There must be a reason for it. When I was in elementary school, when I was a first grader, they gave us IQ tests. And of my class of 72, 18 of us scored in the genius level, which was a shock because that's way too high a percentage of individuals from one small community. Now, the other thing that was odd about my community was not just that we, in this one class, we had 18 out of 1870 seconds or 9 36ths of our students were scored in the genius level. But the other thing was that we were living in a blue collar community, and it was fairly rural. And because of that, the people from the city right next door, Muncie, this is in Indiana. The people in Muncie, where Ball State University is, at the time it was Ball State Teachers College, were appalled by the fact that here we have this small community with all these children that have really high IQs. And they were kind of upset because their community, which is an urban community, with a college professor with a college in it, and all these college professors with all their children, and they didn't score nearly as high as we did. So they tested us. They tested us every year. They've tested us every year until we were in the sixth grade, trying to find out what the deal was. And what they determined was that this was in 1955, and television had just come to the area not very long before. They had it in the town, but they didn't have it in the rural area. And all of a sudden, television started to be broadcast out of Indianapolis and into the rural area. And so they determined that one of the reasons that our class had so many children that scored so high is because we were watching television for entertainment. Well, for whatever entertainment was on. In the 1950s, the television fare, especially during the day, was mostly educational television. So we were watching educational programs. That and the fact that the ones who scored the highest on their IQ scores had dictionaries, not dictionaries, encyclopedias at home. And so instead of just gaining little pieces of information, we were gaining large masses of information. And that's why we scored so high on our IQ tests. And of course, looking back and looking at all the individuals that scored so high on the IQ tests, we had a veterinarian, we had a city planner. I'm a college professor. We had a doctor, one medical doctor. So most of the others were school teachers, not just school teachers. There's no such thing as just a school teacher. But looking back, some of those individuals really didn't do very well. One of them became a be, sorry about the dogs. One of them became a hippie and drank himself to death at age 39, which was not that. He was one of the smartest people in the class, so maybe that's what you're supposed to do: is drink yourself to death. The field of writing psychological measures is known as psychometrics, and the people who specialize in developing psychological tests are called psychometricians. Psychometricians from the past have developed tests for studying many areas of psychology, but the most controversial tests that have been the tests that measure intelligence. In 1983, Howard Gardner of Harvard University began expanding our understanding of intelligence. Gardner felt that intelligence came in many forms. Linguistic intelligence, knowing the meaning of words, having the ability to use words to understand new ideas, and using language to convey ideas to others. That's one of Gardner's uh, intelligences. Logical mathematical intelligence, understanding relations that exist among objects, actions, and ideas, as well as the logical mathematical operations that can be performed on them. Spatial intelligence, perceiving objects accurately and imaging in the mind's eye the appearance of an object before and after it has been transformed. Now we can understand this would be a writer, this would be a mathematician, this would be an individual, physics that studies physics, possibly a rocket scientist, so that they can understand gravity and understand how gravity pulls and how it doesn't pull out in outer space. All of these things that has to do with spatial intelligence. Musical intelligence, comprehending and producing sounds varying in pitch, rhythm, and emotional tone. And of course, that would be a composer. Bodily kinesthetic intelligence, using one's body in highly differentiated ways, as dancers, craftspeople, and athletes do. Interpersonal intelligence, identifying different feelings, moods, motivations, and intentions in others. That would be counselor of sorts. Intrapersonal intelligence, understanding one's emotions and knowing one's strengths and weaknesses. And that would be, well, I'm not sure who that would be. In 1999, Gardner added naturalistic intelligence, recognizing and distinguishing among members of a group of species and describing relations between such groups. That would be a botanist or a zoologist. Gardner's latest addition to his intelligences was existential intelligence in 2002, considering ultimate issues such as the purpose of life and the nature of death. Gardner based much of his theorizing on the research being done with savants, individuals with mental deficits who showed extreme intelligence in one or more domains. In other words, they were they had a specific type of thought process that was very astute. And usually this had to do with the individual being able to concentrate on one specific thing. I'm going to show you a video, maybe, if it's still there. Yep, there we go.
Qatar Airways, taking you on a journey with Quest.
The Public Library in Salt Lake City, Utah. It's often said that the mind works in mysterious ways. In the case of 55-year-old Kim Peek, this is truer than most. He's the world's most famous savant, a confounding mix of mental disability and brilliance. My zip code, where I used to live, was 10003. Where is that apartment?
Lower East Side. Lower East Side.
My office is at 30303. Where is that?
Atlanta.
Kim's remarkable brain became the real-life inspiration for the character of Raymond Babbitt in the movie Rain Man.
Sally Gibbs did Sally. 461-0192.
How did you know my phone number?
How'd you know that?
Said read the telephone book last night. Gibbs Sally. 461-0192.
It's a role that earned Dustin Hoffman an Oscar and brought worldwide attention to the phenomenon of the so-called idiot savant.
Dustin walked up to Kim after he'd spent about 6 hours with us in Hollywood, and he touched noses with him, and he says, "Kim, I may be the star, but you're the heavens."
I was born on March the 9th, 1962.
Was a Friday.
Kim was born with severe brain damage, but with his disability came an astonishing gift, a photographic memory. Like other savants, the mechanism of his condition is poorly understood.
Kim's brain, no left brain, no right brain. He has one hemisphere, doesn't have any separation, and total absence to the corpus callosum, which has to be a filtering system. And he has no filtering system, so instead of 45% to 50% that yours and my brain keeps, he keeps in about 98%.
Against all the odds, Kim Peek learned to read. Books and the unquenchable thirst for knowledge came to dominate his world. Last president of the Soviet Union was who?
Gorbachev.
Longest serving leader of the Soviet Union?
Stalin.
Oh, this is hard. Identify the famous son of Pepin the Short.
Carloman.
The City Library is Kim Peek's second home, and for good reason. He's already read about 9,000 books. Luckily, the library has 600,000, so it should keep him busy for some time to come.
Okay. Let's look at Derek. Maybe. There we go.
Let me ask you, Mr. President, about another.
When Derek Paravicini is playing the piano, it's hard to believe there's anything he can't do. And yet, when you meet him away from the keyboard, as we first did in London 6 years ago, the contrast is shocking.
Can you hold up 3 fingers for me?
I can do that.
Can you hold up 3?
I don't know how to do it.
You want me to show you 3?
Yes, please,
Okay.
yes.
Derek is a musical savant, blessed with an island of extreme talent in a sea of profound disability. Derek was excited to show us the skills that make him so exceptional. His ability to instantly call up any piece of music he has ever heard, like YMCA.
Can you play that
I
one?
can play YMCA.
And I asked him to play a show tune. But it isn't just that Derek remembers them. He can transform them effortlessly and seamlessly into the styles of different musicians, like jazz greats.
Switch to Oscar Peterson. How's about Dave Brubeck?
It's like he's got libraries of pieces and styles in his head.
Adam Ockelford is Derek's teacher.
He can just whip out a piece book and a style book and just bring them together. It just kind of explodes.
There we go. Okay, savants. Children will have a fairly extensive vocabulary by the time they begin school. School will allow them to use language to analyze, study, and understand language, and this is known as metalinguistic awareness. Children will begin using figurative language forms as they delve deeper and deeper into their academics. They'll understand similes, proverbs, idioms, and metaphors. Some elementary schools offer a second language which includes proper grammar as well as vocabulary, and this is known as school bilingualism. Children usually learn to read when they enter school at age 6 or 7. Reading requires direct instructions and the ability to learn symbols and understand meanings. The 2 main approaches to reading are phonics and whole language. The phonics approach advocates teaching children to read by breaking down wording into their sound components and then putting them together into words. For the whole language approach, the emphasis should be on the meaning of written language in whole passages, so the children can guess at the meaning of the words based on the context. The approach that works best appears to be a combination of the 2 approaches, beginning with phonics and later supplementing with the whole language approach. Most children become able readers by the 3rd grade, but some suffer from conditions such as dyslexia, which includes difficulty sounding out letters, difficulty learning to spell words, and a tendency to misperceive the order of letters in words. Other children have difficulty reading due to the range of learning disabilities, which are cognitive disorders that impede the development of learning a specific skill, such as reading or math. Positive effects of peer relations. They develop skills needed for sociability and intimacy. They enhance relationships. They gain a sense of belonging. Helps them make independent judgments. Negative effects of peer relations. A child is expected to accept a group's values and behavioral norms, even if undesirable, and children may not be able to resist. The peer group may reinforce prejudice. School-age children develop an organizational order with the peer groups that develop a social hierarchy. This ranking is based on how much a child is liked or disliked by others. Children will construct their own self-image and self-concept on how they are treated by their peers. Most school-aged children consider themselves average in their ratings to others. Most children are well aware who are the neglected and rejected children in their peer group. Popularity, peer relationships in middle childhood leads to later social adjustment. Popular children have good cognitive abilities, are higher achievers, are good at solving social problems, help other children, are assertive without being disruptive or aggressive. Now, in this this is really kind of an interesting picture because we can see that there's one child that is entertaining this group of children, and there's one person that's very interested in the leader. And so the leaders are these two boys that are sitting here. One of them is this African American child right here. Wait a second. Let me get out of here and get my arrow back. Whoops. Sorry. Need to get my arrow back. This is one of the leaders, and the other one is this child right here, the one with the knee pads on. These are the two leaders, and the reason we know that is because of the 6 children in the picture. 2 of them are the leaders. They're the people that 3 of them are focusing on, and this kid is looking at the photographer. But this child and this child are the 2 leaders in the group. And we know that because everybody is focused on them. This is the child that's making all the noise, but this individual and this individual are looking to these 2 to see who is whether they are responding to him or not, whether they're supposed to respond to him or not. Oops. Unpopularity. Children can be unpopular for many reasons, or being overly aggressive, being hyperactive, being withdrawn, acting silly and immature, acting anxious and uncertain. They may be insensitive to others' feelings. They may not adapt well to new situations. They may show undue interest in the opposite sex. They may expect not to be liked, and this, of course, is known as a self-fulfilling prophecy. Neglected children are those children who are ignored to the point of invisibility in their class. Neglected children often have trouble making friends due to the unsureness in communication with peers and adults and high scores on inhibition. This makes it difficult for them to interact with peers and adults, and they don't develop the same social friendship skills as their peers. Other studies have found that less talkative children are viewed as less approachable by peers and are seen as less desirable social partners by the time they reach upper primary school grades. Many studies have found that this rejection is in part triggered by adults' responses to the children. Rejected is the term generally used to describe those children who are actively disliked by their peers. In sociometric observations, rejected children were those who received lots of negative and not many positive friendship nominations from their peers. There is some evidence to suggest that parenting styles, rather than berserk pituitary glands, have an influence on the development of children's friendship skills. Children that are hostile and aggressive in their approaches to their peers have often had similar behavior modeled at home. SELMAN'S stages of friendship. Stage 0, age 3 to 7, momentary playmateship. Undifferentiated level of friendship. Children are egocentric and have difficulty considering another person's point of view. They only think about what they want from a relationship. Friends are defined by closeness. Material attributes and physical attributes are what the children are looking for. Sally Ann is Jilly's bestest friend as long as she does what Jilly wants her to do. Sally Ann has the prettiest clothes, so Jilly likes her. Sally Ann has a Powder Puff Girls game station game, so Jilly likes her more. Stage 1, age 4 to 9, one-way assistantship. On this unilateral level, a good friend does what a child wants the friend to do. Doing things together is a momentary thing. Their friend tends to be whomever they are playing with at the time. Jeannie likes Joy because Joy doesn't like purple, so they don't have to fight over Jeannie's favorite doll dresses. Sometimes Joy isn't Jeannie's friend because she won't play makeup with her mom's stuff. Stage 2, age 6 to 12, two-way fair weather cooperation. Friendship involves give and take, but it also serves separate self-interests rather than common mutual interests to both parties. Sharing is an important component. A friendship is more than being thrown together. Personalities have to mesh. They must share ideas, feelings, and interests. Jeannie and Tia are always together. Sometimes they have little tiffs, and secretly Tia says she would rather be best friends with Gloria, but Gloria is best friends with her next door neighbor. Tia and Jeannie always find each other to make sure that neither one is alone. Stage 3, ages 9 to 15, intimate, mutually shared relationships. Children now view friendship as having a life of its own. It is an ongoing, systematic, committed relationship that incorporates more than just doing things for each other. It is something treasured, and parties become possessive and often demand exclusivity. Children tend to have one or two intimate friends. Boys have more, less intimate friends. Girls have one or two intimate friends, and boys have more, but less intimate friends. Melissa and Maya have been friends since starting school, and they have grown into being best friends. They sometimes argue, but not for long. In the 6th grade, Maya started getting pressure from her community to find an Asian friend, but both girls made sure that this conflict did not end their friendship. Now they discuss clothes and boyfriends only with each other. Maya has Asian friends, but not friends she can discuss relationships with. Self-esteem. Erickson's fourth crisis begins as a child enters school and starts comparing themselves with their peers, industry versus inferiority. Conflict of competence is the task. A view of the self is able to master skills and complete tasks is the crisis resolution. Children rate physical appearance most important. Self-esteem is second in importance. Social acceptance is third. Social support from parents and classmates, friends, and teachers is also important. Divorce was very difficult throughout the American history until the 1960s. People who should have divorced decades before suddenly saw light at the end of the tunnel. There was a glut of divorces that peaked in the 1980s. I know this because I lived through that era. And I actually got a divorce in 1973 and then again in 1975. In the 1990s, nearly half of all North American children experienced their parents getting a divorce. This is very distressing for children, of course. Almost all studies show that no matter what the age of the child, when their parents divorce, it is disruptive to their well-being. When the divorce laws in the United States were liberalized in the 1960s, the devastation for children was quite profound. As time went by, the impact on children lessened. It is speculated that this is because the prospect of divorce became more commonplace and society accepted this outcome. In my grade school and high school, there was one divorced family in my whole school. Now, of course, every other child comes from a divorced home, but when I was growing up, there was only one family that was divorced in the whole town. In the 1990s, the outcomes turned negative again as the incomes from single parents became lower. As the children age into adulthood, the products of divorced relationships tends to have more conflict in their own relationships and are more likely to end up in divorce. For a child, the first year after the divorce is the toughest, but by the second year, they tend to adjust to the new circumstance. Children adjust better to divorce if their parents can cooperate with one another, especially on disciplinary matters. Joint custody is the best outcome for the children, though this doesn't always occur. Divorce and child development, the absence of a role model and a source of parental support can lead to problems. Single parents tend to have economic problems that they didn't have when they married. Conflict between parents is extremely distressing to the children involved. Many of the problems with divorce are seen in children who just experience the conflict without the divorce. Which children are the most affected by divorce? The child who focuses on negative events will suffer greater trauma from a divorce. Children who can handle the threat of divorce will actually be stronger in the long run for dealing with the trauma. Parents can help their children adjust to a divorce situation by not competing with each other. Criticizing their ex-spouse should never be done in front of their children. Children should never be used to mediate disputes between warring spouses. Between 1970 and 1996, the proportion of children under 18 years of age living with one parent grew from 12% to 28%. The rate of marriages is 0.40% per capita per year. The divorce rate is 0.41% per capita per year. Adjusting to divorce generally involves 6 tasks: acknowledging the reality of the marital rupture, disengaging from parental conflict and distress and resuming customary pursuits, resolving loss of the parent they aren't living with, security in feeling loved and cared for by both parents, familiar daily routines, and family traditions, resolving anger and self-blame, accepting the permanence of divorce, and achieving realistic hope for their own intimate relationships. Children do better when the father pays child support. This shows that the father is more involved. The frequency of contact is not as important as the quality of the parent-child relationship. Children do not enjoy a good relationship with their non-custodial father, tend to be behavior problems. Children who do not enjoy a good relationship. Influences on adjustment: age or maturity, gender, temperament, psychological and social adjustment. The parent must handle the following issues delicately: custody and visitation arrangements, finances, reorganization of household duties, contact with the non-custodial parent, remarriage, child's relationship with a step-parent. Younger children are more anxious about divorce. They have less realistic perceptions of what caused it. They're more likely to blame themselves for the divorce. They may adapt more quickly than older children. They may fear abandonment and rejection. School-aged children are sensitive to parental pressures and loyalty conflicts. They fear abandonment and rejection as well. Boys usually find it harder to adjust than girls do. This may depend largely on how involved the father is with his family. In most cases, the mother is awarded custody of the children. Total custodial mothers, 11,268,000. That's about 80%. Total custodial fathers, 2,907,000. That's about 20% of all divorce cases. Custodial mothers who receive a support award, about 79.6%. Custodial fathers who receive a support award, only about 30%. Non-custodial mothers who totally default on support, 46.9%. Non-custodial fathers who totally default on support is 26.9%. Involvement of the non-custodial parent. The more recent the separation, the closer the father lives to his children. The higher the socioeconomic status, the more likely the father will be involved. The non-custodial father is more likely to lose contact if he has biological children from a new marriage. Non-custodial mothers keep twice as much contact as non-custodial fathers and are less likely to break contact after remarriage. The number of single-parent families has quadrupled since 1960. A child today has at least a 50% chance of living with only one parent at some time during their lives. In 1998, one-parent families comprised almost one-third of all U.S. families with children under 18. Unwed mothers create more single-parent families than divorce does. 1 out of every 3 children born is born to an unwed mother. In 1998, 4 out of 10 children who lived with a single mother lived with a mother who had never been married. In 2004, over a quarter of births to women ages 25 to 29, 27.8%, and over half the births to women ages 20 to 24, 54.8%, were to unmarried women. Birth rates for unmarried women, 52.5 births per 1,000 unmarried women aged 15 to 44 years. Percent of all births to unmarried women, about 41%. In 2020, the state with the highest percentage of births to teenagers was Mississippi with 54.2%. The state with the lowest was Utah with 19.2%. Arizona had a percentage of 5.2%. New Mexico had a percentage of 51.5%. 75% of divorced mothers and 80% of divorced fathers remarry. 86% of children in remarriages live with their biological mother and stepfather. Sometimes loyalty to the absent parent interferes with forming ties to the step-parent. The more children involved, the more difficult the adjustment. Boys seem to do better in step-parent situations than single mother situations. Girls do worse with a new stepfather and have a harder time adjusting. Most children adjust reasonably well. Children of divorce are twice as likely to drop out of school, more likely to marry young and develop an unstable, unsatisfying relationship. Children from fatherless homes account for 63% of youth suicides, 71% of pregnant teenagers, 90% of all homeless and runaway children, 70% of juveniles in state-operated institutions, 85% of all children that exhibit behavioral disorders, 80% of rapists motivated with displaced anger, 71% of all high school dropouts, 75% of all adolescent patients in chemical abuse centers, 85% of all youth sitting in prison. There you go. Less than amicable split. She knocked him off the top of the cake, and he cut her car in half. When a single mother remarries, there are some interesting problems. Boys benefit from having a father figure around. Girls tend to adjust poorly because of the disruption of their relationship with their mother. Adolescents tend to challenge the new step-parent. When the father is a custodial parent and he remarries, he has problems as well. Often fathers are awarded custody of a male child because they already have problems. Males adjust poorly to the new relationship because they have lost the exclusive attention of their father. Girls tend to do better. Over time, things tend to work out in blended families. Unfortunately, second marriages have a greater probability of ending in divorce. Then the children they just have to go through the same traumas again. Bullying may be defined as a systematic abuse of power, relationships, and social groups. Over the past 2 decades, research has shown that the bullying is a serious problem that has far-reaching effects on both the perpetrators and the victims. The short-term effects of bullying can be quite dramatic. Research has shown that low self-esteem and stress due to bullying can lead to problems with concentration and problem solving. Research also indicates that students who are bullied were more likely to skip school, found it difficult to sleep, and felt ill. Long-term problems that arise from exposure to bullying include low self-esteem, depressive disorders, difficulty in establishing and maintaining relationships with the opposite sex, in extreme cases, death by suicide. The bully, on the other hand, has a greater likelihood of going on to commit more serious crimes later in life. And that is the end of the chapter. So I'll talk to you again next week.